Hello, and welcome to In the Roud. Greetings and salutations, dear listeners. My name is Matt Quinn, and this is In the Roud, a folk song podcast. Join me as we travel through the world of traditional folk song, one song per episode, in the order they appear in the Roud Index. Each episode will feature two guests, one providing an historical look at the song, while the other will be a singer from the folk music scene to talk about their own version of the song. We're now in the middle of Season 3, and this is Episode 6. This week, we're looking at the song labelled Roud 26, which is Child Ballad number 11, The Cruel Brother. Later on, we'll hear from singer-guest Sophie Crawford, but for now, let's take a look at the history of this particular song with Martin Nail. Well, hello and welcome back to In the Roud, Martin Nail. Hello.
Hello, Nat.
Hi. How are you doing?
Oh, okay, thanks.
Good. Yeah, it's been a while since we had you on the pod, as it were. We're now in the middle of March of 2025, and it was middle of July we had you last on because that was the end of season 1 for
Yes,
the Lord Randall episode.
yes, I remember it was sort of just before Sidman.
That's right. That's indeed so it was. And then you weren't involved at all in the last season, and here we are now, the middle of season 3, basically the start of the second half of season 3. And it's very good to have you back.
Thank you.
So good. So we're talking about today a song that I am very unfamiliar with. I mean, I say unfamiliar in different, which is different to unheard of. I have heard of this song, and I've heard one or two people sing it over the last sort of 5 or 6 years, maybe. But other than that, it's a song I'm very unfamiliar with. We're talking about Roud 26, Child Ballad number 11, The Cruel Brother. Not to be confused with, as I got confused with before we started this recording, The Cruel Mother, which we did in season 1, the episode before your last appearance.
Or indeed the Cruel Sister, or...
And there is, of course, the Cruel Sister as well. How helpful this folk music is. But yeah, the Cruel Brother, and that's why the Roud Index is important. Because by using a numbering system, we can differentiate between them.
Indeed.
And so we're here now with the Cruel Brother, Roud 26, Child Ballad 11, as usual. Start us off. What is the plot? Or if, because actually, you know, when we get to it, there might be differing versions that have differing plots and things. But ostensibly, what is the plot and the story of the Cruel Brother?
I think the plot is actually fairly simple and is preserved sort of unchanged in the various versions. Except there are some versions which are very fragmentary and basically have lost everything but the refrain. But ignoring them, the overall plot is pretty simple, although there are quite a few puzzles about it. What it is about is a man courts a woman and asks her to marry him. And she says, normally she says this, but that you have to ask my father, you have to ask my mother, you have to ask my brother, you have to ask my sister, etc. So he goes away and asks her father and asks her mother and asks her sister, but fails to ask her brother. And it's not clear why he doesn't ask the brother. The most common reason given is he forgot, which seems a strange thing to do. Anyhow, So the wedding goes ahead, and on normally it's sort of, or as the bride and groom and best man are riding away, presumably back to the bridegroom's house. They meet her brother, who hasn't forgotten this dreadful slight, and stabs her with a knife. And then, and after a bit of toing and froing, she sits down to make her will. And she makes her will and leaves, nice, useful things to her family, except her brother, who usually gets left a gallows tree to hang upon. And often there are other following bequests to the brother's wife and maybe his children as well, and they get nasty things as well. So that is the basic plot. You can take a lot of sort of themes out of it. I think there's this whole courtship thing, and this notion of asking relatives for permission. And as I said, the brother not being asked is normally the reason is he forgot, but occasionally it's something like her brother wasn't at home or couldn't be found, or there's one version where it says, "I did ask your brother," and yes, she goes and gets stabbed anyhow. And there's this testamentary disposition whereby she leaves all these things to her family and the gallows to her brother. And that we actually had already in Lord Randall, and it occurs in other child ballads like Edward and Lizzie Wan. So that is a sort of common ballad trope. There is one theme which I don't want. Yes, I'll mention it now. Is that some people think there is some sort of idea of incest about this ballad. Mostly that is just on. It seems to me it is just people thinking, well, the brother's reaction to not being asked is so extreme that there must be something more to this story. But I personally don't. I don't go along with that. There is one other example, one other little thing in the version that John Clare collected. There is a line that says, "Have you asked my lover John?" Now, I think that is just a mishearing or a mistranscribing, and it just brother John and lover John sound practically the same. Because if it was really meant that he was her lover, then you'd expect other people in the ballad to sort of react to that in some way.
Yeah, of course.
And as I say, I find that unconvincing, but it is a thing if you look up what people have written about the ballad, that is one thing that some people mention. Other people, like the ballad index, the Robert Wolf's ballad index is, agrees with me that it is, there is not enough evidence there. Though, as with all folk songs, you can, put your own interpretation on if that's what you want to believe when you're singing it. But as I say, I don't believe that. That is the basic plot. There are other things that I think are we going to come up later in this episode about the way the ballad has changed or not changed. But maybe so there's some things to pick up in that plot. So
Yeah, we'll come to that later on. So I noticed, as usual, having a look at the Roud index, we've got 88 entries in the Roud index for this, which seems like a fair few, but as we know, there are always quite a lot of duplicates in the Roud index. The The point of the index isn't just to give you the number of unique versions, it's to give you an index of everywhere that this ballad turns up. So that includes duplicates. So 88 entries may well turn out to be approximately 50 or so, with duplicates. But yeah, but so 88 entries in the Roud index, which leaves, I think, 5 entries in the broadside index. Doesn't seem then that this was the most sort of popular and widespread of songs in that respect.
No, I mean, I think people have remarked that, you know, comparing it particularly with the Cruel Sister, it's, or the Two Sisters, it's just not in the same league in terms of popularity or number of collected versions. I mean, well, I'd sort of say that it it's sort of, there are not nearly so many versions of it as really popular child ballads, but it's something more than a one-off. There are some things in child where there's only about, literally only one version.
I know I found one the other day. I can't remember the Roud number off the top of my head. I mentioned it on a Patreon episode a few weeks ago, but I can't remember the Roud numbers. It's somewhere in the either late 20,000s or the early 30,000s. But it's got one entry, and it's the song "How Much Is That Doggy in the Window." So but that's Steve Roud sort of almost religiously cataloguing any and every song that any and every source singer has ever sung, including all the musical songs and the pop songs they learnt off the wireless. Consequently, "How Much Is That Dog in the Window" has got a Roud number, which has amused me no end, I can tell you.
Yes, as you say, it's because once sort of someone has passed the Roud test for being a traditional singer, then he doesn't want to operate like Sharp and other collectors and say that's a folk song and that's not a folk song.
Yes, it's literally just these are the songs sung by that person.
So I mean, what do you think? I think he would say was interested in is vernacular song, what
Yeah.
sort of real people actually sing, and you can't talk about what real people actually sing if you suddenly start ruling some of them out.
Yeah, if you suddenly apply your own censorship, then you suddenly don't get an accurate representation of what the people were singing. And if the people were singing "How Much Is That Doggy in the Window," then so be it. But yeah, so that's got one entry, and so I don't know. Maybe that one will turn up at some point on the Patreon side when we cover other songs. Who knows? That would be amusing and almost pointless.
There are 14 versions in Child, and 10, no, 11 in Bronson. So that is a lot more than some of the really obscure ones. But as we'll come on to later, it was not a song that was remembered a lot in the tradition.
No. And in terms of how far it spread geographically, I know that the Roud Index includes, yeah, the USA, Scotland, England, Canada, and Ireland, and Northern Ireland as well. But there's not many out of all those. I think the USA has 29 in the Roud Index for it. There's 23 from Scotland, and then it's 19 from England, and then you're down to 2 in Canada and 2 in Ireland, and 1 in Northern Ireland. So it seems to be, basically, America and Scotland really love it, and then England a little bit less, and everywhere else not much.
Yes, oh yes, it's yes, some of it could be down to sort of where people were collecting. But I mean,
Oh, indeed, yes. It's yeah. We can only Steve Roud can only index the things that he can get his hands on, but it's a good indication of certain statistics, even if it potentially may never be the complete picture. because I remember, as he said, it's like piecing together a jigsaw puzzle without knowing how many pieces there are and what the final picture looks like.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, if you look at Child, he's got 10 Scottish, 2 Irish, and 2 English. Bronson's got
Right? Okay.
5 American, 1 Scottish, and 4 English. So I think it depends
Oh,
when you take your sample, what sort of figures you come up with.
absolutely. Yes. Yeah, never yeah, basically the rule is never go by those statistics as a hard and fast rule, but take them as an indication, a kind of yardstick sort of thing, as a thing. So yeah. So then, sort of how far back can we trace this? How far back in time can we find the earliest known version printing, I guess.
Well, the earliest known printing of the words of the ballad was 1776. That, as I say, that is just the words. The earliest printed music was 1823, which is the one of the best known versions these days from Davies Gilbert in Cornwall. And that, yes, I say that, yes, that is the earliest printed music. It's also talking about printed music is very interesting that this is one of the few ballads that Child printed the music for. In volume in the final volume, he did print a number of tunes for ballads, and a lot of those, including this one, were from what he calls the Harris manuscript. And that is something that's interesting in itself because in the 19th century there were a couple of sisters called Amelia and Jane Harris who had learnt a lot of ballads from their mother, who then herself had learnt, I think, from an old nurse. So that probably takes you back into the 18th century. And I I don't know much about the Harris sisters, but I assume they were middle class women who appreciated what traditional ballads were about and had sort of presumably read books and on the subject. The and what they did was to write down all these ballad texts, and they send them to a professor at Edinburgh University, who didn't really do any, a chap called William Ayton, who didn't really do very much about it. And then a few years later, Francis James Child was in Scotland and was picking up little clues about where he could find songs, and he heard of this manuscript that the Harris sisters had compiled, and was trying to track them down, and eventually succeeded in finding them. And what they did then was write out all these ballad texts again, and this time Jane Harris actually wrote out the music for the ballads. So there were 2 manuscripts then. The one that they wrote for Child, he paid them for and took it back to America, and it's now in Harvard University Library. The other one was lost for many years, but eventually turned up in a second-hand bookshop in Edinburgh, and where it was found by someone who knew what it was, as it were. And I believe it is now in Edinburgh University Library. And those 2 manuscripts were reprinted in a book, which edited by Emily Lyle, which contains both. So in effect, is transcripts of both the Harris manuscripts and all the music. But as I say, what Child did, as well as using that text as his version C, I think it is. He also printed some of the music, which was a sort of unusual thing for him.
Yes, that's not what you expect. That's because that's why Bronson exists. The Bronson collection is to provide the tunes for the child ballads. So it's very unusual to find tunes in the child collection.
Yes, I mean, I mean, it seems Jane Harris was, an amateur musician, and she did her best at writing the tunes down. But if you read Bronson's comments or other people's comments, it's there has to be a bit of interpretation of what she wrote. The earliest audio recording, as far as I know, is one that James Madison Carpenter collected from a singer called Belle Duncan in Aberdeenshire in about 1930. And then there were other versions collected in America in the 1930s and 1940s. And then one collected in Northern Ireland in 1970, which is not a vast number of audio recordings, but there are some there.
Yeah, it's interesting that considering that there's quite a lot of printed sources for this that we know of, that it doesn't, on the surface, doesn't crop up much in the oral tradition, as far as we're aware. It seems to have been not picked up, not kept in oral tradition as much as other songs would. But in some respects, it's not a particularly nice subject matter. It depends what they want to do. People want people sing songs they want to sing, and there's all sorts of reasons why a song does or does not stay in the oral tradition.
Yes, I mean, I sing this song myself, but I'd be hard put to explain to you, why.
Why? Say why you sing it, yeah. Oh, we've all got songs like that where we like it, but we can't explain why we like it or why we sing it. We just do. Anyway, so you mentioned earlier that the sort of the bare bones of the plot of this song haven't really developed or changed much over the course of the years from, let's say, 1776 through to sort of nowish or whenever. So what are the differences, if any? Where in the song do things differ?
Okay. As I say, as we've just said, I mean, the overall plot seems to me to be pretty stable, and the structure in terms of having interlaced refrain lines, in other words, a 4-line verse and lines 2 and 4 are refrains, and
Oh yeah, we have that a lot. I mean, we had that in the Cruel Mother song as well. Actually, that usually has that sort of thing in it and things.
a pretty common piece of ballad structure. The Cruel Brother, those refrains tend to be very often names of flowers, rather than completely meaningless things. So that is pretty stable. And things which have changed or which differ between different versions, I think the biggest thing that changes is how many people are involved. And as I said, when I
Oh, is this about how many relatives she asks?
no, not about the relatives, but how many suitors there are. I very deliberately, when I was outlining the plot, failed to say anything about this because what I think the earliest versions have 3 sisters and one suitor coming to court them or court one of them, and it's very often that another ballad commonplace, as it were, is the man prefers the youngest sister, and that pisses off the other sisters. But in this case, that's that bit of plot is not developed. There are just happen to be three sisters, and he asks one of them to marry him, and then the rest of the story continues. But there are other versions where there is one woman and three knights come to court her, and that is the case in the early Cornish version collected by Davies Gilbert.
Oh yeah, because there are some versions I think called the Three Knights, and that's the Cornish one that starts with the line, "There did three knights come from the west."
Yeah,
That's right, isn't it? And that's version 7 in Bronson as well, and yeah, it's indeed. So there's that sort of thing.
but there's actually not very many which have one woman and three men. The most, in fact, almost the most common one is where there are three of each. So there's three women and three men, but that's so they're sort of introduced into the ballad, but then they disappear from sight. And Professor Child was a bit sniffy about some of these things, and he said, "Three knights are to no purpose. Only one knight has anything to do. The reason for the three ladies is, of course, that the youngest may be preferred to the others." So, and just looking at some of these, I think that the version with one knight and three ladies is sort of original, but for some reason, people have either deliberately changed things or have forgotten how things went exactly, and you end up with one woman and three knights, or alternatively three of each. Also, I mean, especially in America, they're no longer necessarily knights. There's one version in Child where the man is the king of the fairies, which is slightly strange.
I've just noticed. I've just noticed an Appalachian one from Sharp called "The Cruel Brother," where the first line is, "The first landlord was dressed in white." So are they three landlords in at least a version?
Yes, there's a couple of things, and I think they're both collected by Sharp. Yeah, where there are three landlords, and another version where there are three lawyers. So that varies a lot, and if you go along with what Child says, then it's it's sort of slightly strange because there isn't a sort of role in the plot for all these additional characters. So that's the most obvious change that happens. There's also something which does change, but not a lot. Is yes, the three women are usually dressed in colours like red, white, and green. In the versions where there is only one woman and three knights, and it's the three knights who are dressed in red and white and green. But I'm not. It seems. I mean, I don't sort of see it myself as being an important part of the plot because, again, it's like having three knights when you only need one. I mean, there's nothing. They're not sort of reflective of their character or anything like that. Well, it's a way of getting a bit of repetition into the ballad, which is one of the things that you often get in ballads is two or three parallel verses. So there's the first night came and did this, and the second night came, and the third night, and all that sort of stuff. So that is something which changes, but it changes as a sort of consequence of changing the number of characters. I think that's about the way it has changed most over the years. But as I said, the basic plot of this woman being murdered by her brother and making a will, leaving things to her family and leaving things like the gallows tree to her brother. I mean that is pretty stable, and that's pretty much in all the versions, except there are some bits that are just fragments of the ballad. Sometimes basically just the bits of refrain line about the flowers, and that um, and that, if you look at them in Child or Bronson, they I mean, you wouldn't look at, if you didn't know the Cruel Brother had these refrains about flowers and so on, you wouldn't dream of that this fragment was part of anything else. You certainly doesn't have any of the plot of the Cruel Brother.
But yeah, in Bronson, then the looking at the refrain lines, the second and fourth line of each four-line verse. Version one, the second line is heck hey and the lily gay, and then you have and the rose is I the redder I. The rose is yes, the redder yes, I suppose. Um, Version two, from Dorset, with a hay and my lily gay, and then the rose it smells so sweetly. Version three from Hot Springs, North Carolina, I owe the lily gay, and the rose smells so sweet I know. Version four is also from Hot Springs, North Carolina. I am the lil I know, and the rose smells so sweet I know. Version 5, Avery County, North Carolina. Oh, Lily O, and then Lily O, Sweet High O. So there's no rose in that one at all, just Lily. Version 6 is Polly Johnson. We'll come back to Polly Johnson, I'm sure, in a few minutes. I, Lily O, and the rose is sweet, I know. So they're all kind of variations on a theme with that.
Most of them have lilies and roses in them.
That's right. Version 7, which is one of the ones from Cornwall, with the high and the lily o, as the rose was so sweetly blown. So that's interesting. Version from Cornwall that is a different format, or it's the colours and generic flowers in version 8 called Flowers of the Valley. There was a woman, and she was a widow. The flowers that were in the valley, a daughter she had, and then some words no one can understand. Oh, the red, the green, and the yellow. The harp, the lute, the fife, the flute, and the cymbal. Sweet goes the treble violin, the flowers that were in the valley. No idea at all. It's one of those weird little ones that is just like, what on earth? But looking ahead to some more Bronson ones, the two after that are both called Flowers of the Valley, and they mention instruments as well as the colours.
They're pretty fragmentary, aren't they?
Yes, we got another one from Cornwall, Flowers of the Valley, where the first verse is there was a widow all forlorn, 9 brave boys from her body were born, flowers that were in the valley. The harp, the lute, the fife, the flute and cymbal, sweet goes the treble violin, flowers that were in the valley. And that's basically a kind of the same chorus in all three of those Flowers of the Valley versions. And then finally, version 10, there was a knight all clothed in red, the flowers that were in the valley. Oh, and wilt thou be my bride, he said. Oh, the red, the green, and the yellow, the harp, the lute, etc. So that's interesting. I've not come across that version at all.
The only reason for saying that this is a version of The Cruel Brother is the flowers in the valley bit, because the thing about a widow all forlorn, 9 brave boy, that sounds a bit something from a completely different ballad.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
So as I say, I think the only reason that Bronson has put it where he has, I assume, or maybe it's partly the tune as well, being Bronson, but it's because those refrain lines sort of are more like ones that go with the Cruel Brother than the Wife of Hush as well.
Maybe, yeah. That's right. Well, that's interesting on some levels anyway. That sort of thing. Anything else you want to say, or should we move on to the the audio recommendations?
As we were saying, there are not a lot of field recordings of this ballad. It seems to have been quite popular for some reason in the southwest of England, but more particularly in Scotland and somewhat later in America. But what it has left us in terms of field recordings in the 20th century, let's say, is pretty few. I mean, I've counted 5 different singers and their songs,
Yeah, that's what's in the Roud Index.
3 from the USA and 1 from Scotland.
So, what are the field recordings then that are sort of that exist and or are available somewhere?
There are 4 that I've found online and one I haven't, which is the Northern Ireland one, because I haven't had time to chase up. I assume it was collected by Hugh Shields, so I assume the recordings are in the Irish Traditional Music Archive, but I sort of haven't chased that up to discover whether anything's available online or whether one has to go to Dublin to listen to them. Apart from that, yes, there's Bell Duncan, who was collected from by James Madison Carpenter, and those recordings are all on the Vaughan Williams Memorial Library website.
Oh yeah,
There is one, then there's 3 collected in America in the 30s and 40s, and one of them's on YouTube, and I can't remember. I think that it says it's the Smithsonian put that up on YouTube, so they're presumably happy with people listening to that. And the other ones, well, one of them, yes, the other ones I think are all in university collections. There's one at Ely Cole in West Virginia and Edith Price in Rhode Island. They are, yes, I think those are all, they're definitely there, and don't think there's any restrictions on listening to them.
sure. But yeah, so we've got Mrs. Eli Cole, which is available, I think, in 2 halves. I think of the recording. There's 2 recordings which we think
Yes,
are 2 halves of the song. That's Louis W. Chappell was the collector, and so the collection, the Louis W. Chappell collection, is in the West Virginia University. That's a recording from 1940, the 14th of August, 1940, in Big Creek. I'm not entirely sure where Big Creek is. Oh, is it West Virginia still? Yeah, yeah. And then, that one, and then there's also Polly Johnson, who mentioned earlier. That's probably, and that's out on an official LP because it was collected by Herbert Halpert in 1939, and that's on an LP I think called Virginia Traditions: Ballads from British Tradition, and that's a version called The Three Maids. And there's a version from Newport, Rhode Island, in the Helen Hartness Flanders collection, which resides at the Middlebury College in Vermont, and 1945 recording of a woman called Edith Ballinger Price, and so that's all there. I think that might be available to listen to online. And there's an Irish one you mentioned as well, which we haven't done the research for properly, but a woman called Mrs. Rose McCartin, collected by Hugh Shields in 1970, and that's on a that I think that was released once on an Angolin release called Early Ballads in Ireland, and so yeah, Northern Ireland. So there's basically a handful of things out there,
yeah.
isn't there? Really, so not brilliant, but certainly more than some some songs. But yeah, I think that's fascinating stuff. I think we'll draw it to a close there. I think.
Well, yeah, just I would just like to mention one other recording, which is not a traditional singer, but a woman called Catherine Campbell, um, who recorded all the Harris sisters ballads. Well, I mean, well, the ones that have got tunes. So, although that is not a traditional recording, as it were, it is somebody who's researched and gone back and, you know, put put the music to the words, as it were, so one can hear at least their interpretation of what the Harris sisters collected. So I think, that's a recording that's um, worth thinking about, which is on Springtime Records, I think.
Oh yeah, and so the Cruel Brothers is on there, is it?
Yes, yes,
Oh, there we go. Excellent. I'll make sure to put a link to that in the show notes then. That's very good.
yes, Cool Brother.
Anyway, I think we better leave things there. Thank you ever so much, as usual, for your time and effort and knowledge on these things. Very much appreciated. And I'm sure we'll have you back at some point. This is your only contribution to this season of In the Round, but I'm sure we'll look at the list of what's coming up over the next, I don't know, year or so, and we'll see what there is, see what the future holds in store for you. But for the time being, though, Martin Nail, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Matt.
A huge thanks again to Martin Nail for providing us with the history of the Cruel Brother. As I discussed with Martin, there doesn't seem to be much in the way of field recordings of this song. I know there is an audio entry or two in the Roud Index, but I wasn't able to source the tracks down to play on here. So on we go, straight away into the second half of the episode. I sat down for a chat about this song with this week's singer guest, Sophie Crawford. Well, hello and welcome to In the Roud, Sophie Crawford. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Hi, how are you? How's things?
I'm good, I'm good. I'm happy to be here on this sunny day.
Ah, very good. It's sunny. It's not sunny here in just north of Sheffield. It's bright, but it's grey. It's one of those sort of weird days, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, it's great to have you here. I mean, we've only actually seen each other in person once before. I think that was a year and a half ago. I think at Sidmouth Folk Week. I think 2023 Sidmouth.
Yeah, Sidmouth and at Saltburn. Don't forget Saltburn.
And at Saltburn 2024, actually, yes.
Yeah, that's
we
true.
We didn't get to talk, but I was in the audience for your gig, and you were in the audience for one of my gigs.
Yeah, there you go.
So we've seen each other, but yeah, it's nice to see you again. Anyway, it's been too long.
Yeah, I like seeing all your melodians.
Right, so yeah, we're in the middle of season 3 of the podcast. I can't believe I'm here already. It's ridiculous.
Congratulations.
Long way to go, but it's good. It's all good. And we've got an excellent song to talk about today. Before we get into the song, "The Cruel Brother," we've already heard the history of the song from the excellent Martin Nail earlier. Yeah. Before we get to the song, though, tell us a bit about yourself, your sort of history with folk music, and were you, some people find folk music, other people have folk music thrust upon them, and how did folk music happen for you, and about your musical upbringing as well. I know you're a singer and you play lots of instruments. Give us the lowdown on Sophie Crawford.
Oh, well, I guess I'm the latter category in terms of thrust upon you. I grew up with folk music, so I was going to Towsey Folk Festival from when I was sort of born as a little baby and totally fell in love with the music there. I think my parents went because they were sort of lefties and into trade unionism, and friends brought them there because of that. But then I just totally loved it, and it was like my highlight of every single year, and it was all I sort of ever dreamed of being and doing, and I became obsessed with the music. And I can remember being like 14 or maybe younger. I must have been like maybe 12 or 13, and like looking up, the Newcastle folk music degree course and all of this stuff, and being like, wow, imagine if I did that. Anyway, so I was really, really, really obsessed with it. And it was there that started, like, heard musicians and singers, like, like people like Martin Carthy and Kate Rusby and Eliza Carthy and Nancy Kerr, all these sort of stalwarts who really introduced me to like ballad singing. And so that's what got me into singing. And also because I loved learning the songs, I like listening to the music over and over and over again and like singing them to myself. So that's how I got into the music. And then at school, I was very much pushed towards very classical singing, which I learned but didn't love. It was always like a sort of basis for folk music. And so I did that. And then as a sort of antidote to that, I first taught myself the melodeon. There was just one in my parents' house when I was about 14.
Hurrah!
And then I was doing more stuff with theatre at that point. And from when I was about 15, 16. And that was when I was given a piano accordion, because they didn't like a diatonic melodeon. No, they wanted chromaticism.
You're greedy. You wanted all the notes.
You want all the notes? Yeah. So they gave me a piano accordion and said, learn this. And so I learnt that.
I mean, to be fair, that's why I also learned the duet concertina, because it's got all the notes.
All the notes. I know. And in some ways, I think my back has rued the day I switched from melodeon to piano accordion, because of the weight of these things in contrast to the lovely, beautiful lightness of a melodeon. But so I taught myself piano accordion, and then sort of pushed on. And I've always, and folk music's always been the fundamental thing in my life, but there have been lots of other ways of doing it. So I do work a lot in theatre, playing music in shows, singing in shows, and then also I now have written a book which has got like folklore in it, but it's like a novel. Yeah, so it's like finding lots of other ways. I don't know why, but I think for me, when I was young, I cared so much about folk music. It was almost sort of painful, and it put so much pressure on myself in relation to it. And because I'm not a very technical player and I'm not a very technical singer, my emphasis is much more about the storytelling, and that's where I'm, I feel I can do that okay, but I'm not virtuosic by any stretch. So I always have to find ways of stopping myself becoming like a lunatic and being like, you're terrible at all these instruments, who do you think you are, by being like, just do it in a play, do it in a book, do it in this way. So I've got to spread the pressure. So that's sort of my like relationship with and background in folk music, but very founded in Towersey and the sing-arounds there, and sessions, and music I got to listen to, and collect.
Nice. So did you end up doing music at a sort of university level or anything, or was that not a path for you?
No, I was so fascinated. Well, it was interesting. Like, I was so set on going to Newcastle, and my school were very opposed to it, very weirdly.
So you were going to come to the folk degree?
I know. It was what I always wanted to do. I used to keep the what you needed on your degree, like for your A levels. I used to keep it in my pocket. And then because it was like the one thing I wanted. And then my school had a very very poor music department. And I did music AS, but people were sort of failing their music A level left, right, centre. I'm not sure why. And so when I was about to do music A level, they said, have you considered not doing music A level? And I was like, what about this degree I want to do, this music? And they were like, what about going to Cambridge and being a choral scholar? And I was like, I don't see where folk music factors into that. And they were like, we think you should do that. So I remember remember applying, but the whole time I remember saying to myself, genuinely, as I was waiting for the results, if I don't get in, I'm taking a year out. I'm going to do our music A level, and I'll reapply to Newcastle. But then I got in, and I did the choral scholarship, and actually dropped out of that choral scholarship because I'm not a choral singer. But yeah, I got a choral scholarship, and I went to study English, and did my dissertation actually on folklore collecting, on like the ethics of folklore collecting.
Oh, amazing! Wow.
Yeah, which I really love. But I was, it was just me trying to find ways of talking about folk music, basically, in an English degree.
So what year would you have joined the folk degree then, if you had done it?
If I'd done it, well, I graduated in 2012, Matt, so I'm relatively old. So
you would have turned up in the 2008.
Yes, something like that. Yeah.
That was the year I joined the folk degree.
Oh my God, Matt, we would have been in the same year, and you could have been like, Sophie, it's okay, you can play the accordion.
Absolutely,
I'd
yes.
been like, can I, Matt? I'm not
I'm
sure.
sure we would have been best buds from minute one.
Matt, that would have been so nice. Yeah, I feel like I've spent my life trying to like get back to it, having been sort of
in another life, eh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That was well, we could have been in the same year group. That was amazing.
I know, I'd have loved that. Did you have a good time?
Yes, I say tentatively.
I've heard a lot of stuff. I know.
I had. I'm not going to say anything on a public forum like this, but I, for the most part, I had a great time.
Great, well
done. But you always have your own opinions about things, and you end up disagreeing about ways that things should be done, or other things that I can't really be bothered to talk about because and then you end up calling it a biased pile of shite on Facebook like I did, though I didn't realise the tutors could see that. It was it was terrible. I had a very rebellious. I had a very rebellious 3 months in my final year, and it was not very good. I'm not particularly pleased with those 3 months.
Don't worry. 3 months is a long. It's not that. It's not very.
No,
long.
Exactly. I just aired it on Facebook. But anyway, yes. Well, there we go.
Yeah. So folk music's always been like the sort of North Star of everything I do, but I wouldn't say I've done it purely because I've just had to find ways to take the pressure off myself in relation to playing. I don't know. It's just my temperament is a bit bonkers. So you've got to find ways of sustaining it. Yeah,
that's fine, and you do whatever works for you, and but also we don't. It's not like the folk scene is sort of lacking in people who perform. There's a lot of us, and so it's also worth spreading out into things like podcasting,
exactly,
and doing ethnomusicology work, and writing papers and that kind of the academic route, or putting folk music into other avenues, as you say, like books and theatre and stuff and whatever. Spreading it around a bit so that you're not just necessarily another person performing, but do that as well, because I know you do. But it's worth having multiple avenues for the same sort of subject matter, I think.
Yeah, you're so right. Thanks, mate. Make me feel better. And also, I guess I should mention queer folk, because that's also been really helpful as a way of getting myself back. I mean, like I was already running I ran a poetry and music night for 6 years, which was very folk music and writing, and I run a sing around every month. So I was kept my foot in, but I wasn't maybe doing it I wasn't doing it purely. And then I also, with George Sampson, run Queer Folk, which we started a couple of years ago. And that's been a lovely way of, again, like renegotiating the folk space, I think, because it can be a tricky place to be. And I was trying to understand sometimes whether it was all just me feeling really like, why can't I play this very quick thing? Or also if there were, ways in which we could be more welcoming. So Queer Folk is just a means of I should tell people what it is, just in case they don't know. It's about it's a project where we research queer history in folk music, and also promote LGBTQIA plus performers and events within the folk scene. So run the Queer Ceilidh and do research in archives about songs, and it's a really
fantastic. It's a really brilliant project. I'm by the nature of who I am and what I am, I'm not involved at all in any sort of queer folk project.
You're always welcome. Come along to the stage.
It's quite welcome. Yes, indeed. It's just
welcome.
I am a cis hetero, straight. So it's not in my
lovely.
Essentially, it's not in my wheelhouse at all. But very in awe of the work you're doing with George on
Yeah,
that.
well,
It's
it's
absolutely
fun.
fantastic.
It was fun research, but likewise,
Yeah.
it's like same
And I
here.
do want to get you and George on together on a Patreon
Yeah,
episode to actually talk about the project properly.
yeah. Well, because there are a lot of. I'm sure there are some. Well, there definitely are Roud songs.
Oh yeah,
Talking about
absolutely.
that we're recording and thinking about and giving to
Oh,
people.
that's an idea. Maybe I'll do a mini season. We could all join forces for
I mean,
a little queer folk in the Round mini season
oh yeah, definitely. I'd
to
love that.
cover 3 or 4 songs that are ones that you guys have properly looked
Definitely.
at.
Yeah, that
Well,
would be lovely.
yes, I'm seeing George on Thursday. I'll mention that.
Like, great. Yeah, talk to
I was
him.
to say, yeah,
Pitch it.
Sophie's in Queer Folk with George, and I am in a duo with George, and so yes, this is the George Sansom Appreciation Club
Yeah,
happening.
exactly. Yeah, well, he makes stuff happen, doesn't he? So that's
He
a good
does.
thing. Yeah,
He's a fantastic chap.
Organizer. But yeah, so that's my sort of folky history, and I guess I'm only going to mention this because it's sort of relevant to the song. Is also singing is very central to going on for walks in my family. So when you go on big long walks, there's lots of singing, and that's often how I would remember and learn songs.
Right.
Which is relevant because that's how I sort of learned this one.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well then, let's get onto the song.
Yeah.
Before we get on to the version that we're going to mainly talk about and hear later on, do you have a memory of the first time you ever heard or came across any version of The Cruel Brother at all?
Yeah, I remember when I heard this one, and I'm sure actually because we just looked them up, didn't we? So Crucible, I heard Crucible. I now know. I didn't realise that up until we were chatting earlier. I heard Crucible at Towersey sing that, and I could look up when that was, a long time ago.
Crucible was a quartet that not short lived, but they did 2 albums and then split up. But it's there are some well-known people in it. I mean, it's Richard and Jess Arrowsmith.
Yeah.
Jess Arrowsmith was a guest on last season of the podcast, and Gavin Davenport and a woman called Helena Reynolds. But I know that Richard and Jess, obviously, and Gav are still very heavily involved in things.
Yeah.
And it's on one of their albums, isn't it? Called Love or Money, I think.
Yes, that's it. So I heard them sing, and back then in Towersey, children were allowed to sit at the very front on the grass, and so you could sit right at the front and really hear the songs. And I really vividly remember hearing this one and it's sticking with me completely. And genuinely, I haven't listened to another version since all that one because I didn't realise. I just sang it to myself from then on.
Right.
Which is how I remembered it. I don't think I even knew that was what it was called. I didn't know it was called The Cruel Brother, though the clues and the content.
Oh, because it's called Three Maidens, isn't it? On the Crucible version, it's called Three Maidens.
Yeah, but I didn't know that's what it was called.
Okay.
Either because I wasn't looking it up. It was just something that existed in my memory and in the songs that I sing. So it's been a very and then I recorded it in 2018. So Oliver Coates, who's an amazing cellist and electronic musician, came to see me do some. I was doing some music for a show at the time, and he came along and he didn't think much of the show, but he liked my music, and he said, "Oh, I'm getting really interested in folk music, and if you listen to his music, that's really not what he does. He really is an electronic musician." But he was like, "Do you want to come and just do some singing?" And I was like, "Okay." And at the time, I didn't really know what we were up to. And then he was just like, "Yeah, just bring all the folk songs you can think of." And this was one that I knew. And he recorded it with his cello and some of my accordion. And at the end, he went like, "This is going to be a great album." And I was like, "Oh my God, what? We've been making an album? I didn't know that." So that's how it ended up on the 2018 album I made. So yeah, that's my journey with this song. I mean, the content's pretty, reminds me of lots of other ones, but there are elements to the wording that are probably why it stayed in my brain for so long, whereas some songs don't stick, I would say.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, when you came to this song in terms of arranging it, did you end up doing much kind of editing in terms of the words to suit a particular purpose, or was this just like you singing it the way you learnt it or something, or the way you heard it?
I think it was the way I remembered it. So
Right.
it's really 100. In terms of it being like an oral tradition, this feels very exactly that, because I haven't had any top ups of any kind. So it's the way I had remembered, the way I could remember the words. And there are certain images that obviously are very profound within
Yeah.
it. The hangman's noose, obviously, you can't forget that. And also the bridal gown where her heart's blood runs at every seam.
Oh,
Those
that's
kinds of
good.
things
That
stuck in
yeah.
my mind. The idea of this woman leaving her mother her bloody wedding dress, and also the remembering the thing that I always find funny about the beginning of it is the sort of three women, and then these sort of walk on two women, walk on two knights who are sort of semi irrelevant, but are maybe they're just to dramatic effect.
Oh
But
yeah.
so in terms of my arrangement, I guess focused on, yeah, it was probably just telling the story, and I have specific. I haven't altered it intentionally. It would have been altered in my memory, if that
Right.
makes sense. So everything I'm singing
Yeah.
is that, and the tune, the melody. I don't have any confidence as to whether or not how close that is to what I originally heard. I don't think it's miles away, but it would have been something that I worked out as I walked and sang as a
Oh yeah.
child, essentially, and have kept in my head. But yeah, so it's like erosion. It's like something very slow rather than it being like I got these words. I thought I'd find the stream, bash it out. It's been a very gentle percolating
Well, that's
process.
great. Yeah, I don't normally hear that sort of thing. Most people normally it's they do the work and there and then and that's it, you know. And so it's nice to have a different way of looking at things like that. That's really good.
Yeah, well, I think, don't you find, I don't know about you, but I find songs are like company, aren't they? So if you have your big, like, load of songs you've always got in your
Yeah.
mind and you come back to them walking or cycling or anything, and I think that's where they can sort of change very, very gradually. So this one probably is the odd word here and there, but I haven't done any conscious changing. I was interested when I was listening to the history behind it that that Martin was very adamantly not into the incest plot line, because for me that was like, perhaps that was why it sort of stayed with me. The incest plot line feels very like, whoa. The line I've asked of your lover John is such a like kick in the teeth that Sky has realised in my version that the brother she's asked him for the permission to marry is actually like she's seeing him,
Yeah.
and then it made sense of him stabbing her, I guess. And also in the lines with where it's you presume it's the brother shouting after this guy saying ride on and never fail, like your bride looks awfully pale, ride on you false young man, like your bride looks awfully wan,
Yeah.
like that for me speaks to an enraged brother, like
Yeah,
incestuous
it's
brother.
certainly one of those folk songs. It's sort of one of those sort of taboo subjects, obviously the incest. But then somehow in folk
Yeah,
songs, it gives us an avenue to sort of not necessarily discuss them, but at least approach the subject from a song
no,
point of view and discuss
definitely.
them.
I mean,
So it's one
yeah,
you wouldn't necessarily discuss incest with a lot of people, but not that anyone would want to do it. But it's in song form, it becomes a subject that can be broached or at least looked at.
yeah, well, definitely. I mean, it's part of human history, and I feel like folk songs are about people's past lives, and things that happened,
Yeah,
and it did and does. So, I mean, yeah, I don't have a problem with it being in there. I'm not saying it's like I'm not celebrating, but I mean, there's so many songs about like the pity and suffering
yeah.
attached to that. Like I always think of Sheath the Knife,
Sheath and Knife, yeah,
Sheath, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. It's
And the
so
one that springs to
piteous.
mind, the one that springs to mind for me is Lucy One.
Oh yes, yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah. they're just they're sad. They're like really sad songs, and I think yeah,
Yeah.
I think they're important. And it's not as, and funnily enough, in some ways, I feel like The Well Below the Valley for me is like one of those brutal incest ones, because there's something quite callous about that incest, where it's like she's just sort of had to handle all these different things. This one is very much like this one thing happened and he stabbed her, and now she's telling him to hang. I don't know.
Well, in The
Yeah,
World Below the Valley, there's a whole thing about the punishment for this act, isn't there?
of her
Which is
murdering her kids. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's a whole sort
yeah.
of you reap what you will sow sort of thing in there. But with this one,
Well, with this one, she's like, he's gonna hang. But what I'm always so fascinated by is that he's got a wife, which you only find out about sort of last minute, where, as you say,
what will you leave your brother's wife? Yeah, of
yeah, and you're
course.
like, yeah, 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 and you're like, oh, okay, that guy was married, so that's, I don't know, that's not
Well,
right.
it's
Yeah.
not a new concept.
I
You
know.
know, here's
Yeah.
so much about turns out he had a wife and kids down the road.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's not it may be a current subject matter sometimes, but it's not a new
No,
concept.
no,
The idea of
exactly.
men being awful, you know.
Philandering. But I mean, I think, yeah. Also, there's one thing I really like about this song. I think another reason why it stuck with me is because it has all of these funny, slightly jarring images, like just like the opening. I mean, and it's probably because the version I'm singing, I feel like now I'm casting my mind back. They said they might have collected it from Canada, but we'd have to check. But I think it's, like lots of folk songs, it's gone on quite a long journey, and it
Yeah.
feels very cobbled together. And I think that opening of three ladies played a ball, I always love the image of that, but also the whole, I remember when I was reading about the origins of ballad and ball and ballet, and and like, what does
Yeah.
that mean? What does three ladies playing a ball actually mean? Are they actually just playing a game? And then these colourful knights coming and riding by and just picking them off
Yeah.
one at a time and marrying them. So they're quite arresting, just quite odd images.
Because aren't they sometimes? We had this earlier with Martin. There's
Yeah, you're
sometimes
talking about it.
there
Yeah.
were because I found a version where they were landlords, not
Yeah.
knights. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and
Either way, who
I
are
think there
they?
might I think they might have said it's usually knight, but I think there might have been the occasional soldier rather than knight.
Oh,
But
that's
that's kind
interesting.
of more or less the same sort of thing in a way. But yeah, you get the landlords in some of those old source ones, and there's some that are just young man rather than any particular occupation.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Rather
know,
than a
so,
colourful night. But I was thinking, because initially, obviously, I was like, oh, who are these random walk-ons? But I feel like they're there to put the emphasis on the fact that these two other women just get married and it's pretty straightforward. And this third person is like, you've got to ask all these permissions, and then
yeah.
all the shit kicks off.
Well, we had this conversation with Hazel Askew back in season one when we did the Two Sisters,
Mm.
because the song's called the Two Sisters, but there's normally three sisters actually
Sometimes
in
there's a
it.
third, yeah, one,
And
two, and three,
some
yeah.
American versions, there's a fourth one. She
Oh
had sisters.
wow.
He had daughters one, two, three, four.
Oh wow. Okay.
But then it's only really two of the sisters that get actually involved in the plots and stuff until you realise that the it's the eldest. You can't be one girl. It has to be the sibling jealousy, obviously, but it's to really hammer home the fact that the one who the guy in it sort of seduces and falls in love with, it's the youngest one because it's the oldest one that should get married first, and she's
Yeah.
jealous because he fancied the younger one, and so there's a whole thing there. Once you delve into some of the subtext and context, you
Mm.
find reasons why there are more characters at the beginning that aren't necessarily in the rest of the song. They're kind of there for on almost a sort of context and subtext level.
Yeah.
They're just there to set the scene, I guess, and to set in some respect, the sort of the social aspect, the social
Yeah.
context of when this song might have been set as to the attitudes of the characters.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I think that is the case. But that's what I feel like is the case in this one.
Mm.
These three women, and we're sort of comparing them. And also, I don't know, and I also I like the way, the very mild way in which her parents are referred to as well, like her father's role of just like leading her to the door. he's just taking her out of the house. That's all he does. And like the mother gets the wedding dress, but you don't see her apart from that. And I just love the drama of it, of the dad leading her to the door and then her brother just stabbing her like then and there. And I think, yeah, that's sort of I don't know. Again, the violence of that is quite arresting. I think that's maybe why this song really stayed with me. And her sort of falling off her horse as she's getting like losing more and more blood, being like made to ride along. So I think it's that, and I'm sure there are other verses. As I was recording it, I was like, do I want to like look up other verses and change it? But I think because it's been this thing that sort of existed in my head, I was like, oh, let's give you the one that I know, and then I'm sure there'll be other bits and things that you can add. But are there any other folk songs that reminds you of, Matt?
Well, I was thinking about, because the end, you're the "What will you leave your brother's wife? What will you leave brother John?" That's all that sort of. I mean,
Lord
this
Randall-y.
it's Lord Randall. It's the bequests thing.
Yeah.
And my favourite bit of information from that episode, Lord Randall, because that was the last time we had Martin Nail on, because he did the history of the Lord Randall episodes, and he's pointing out that you get the first half of the song and then you get the bequests, essentially, the second half.
Yeah.
And he was pointing out that in some of the, earliest versions in England and Scotland go back to 1700s, I think, but there are versions of this, or at least songs, that if you translate them into English, you could say, well, that's clearly an ancestor of Lord Randall. There are some in like 14th century Italy, I think he said, where if you can look at it and say, well, that's clearly going to become Lord Randall at some point, that sort of thing. And in those ones, it's the same sort of song, except that I love this thing, and we lost it from all the English ones, is that just before the bequests verses, Randall, or whatever character name it is of that song, sends for the notary. There's a verse where he sends for the notary, which is why you get the bequest, because the notary's come.
Wow, he's got a long time in that song. All of these songs, they really don't die quickly, do they? They've got a lot of time to think about it and make some plans. In this song, she can tell her to clean to be like, I'll leave you my wedding dress, but clean it first. I don't know. Like she's thinking about things.
Yeah, I'd love to at some point work up a version of Lord Randall, but go back to one of those Italian versions and get the notary verse and put that in an English one.
Yeah, please.
That's the completist in me. Like, oh, he sends for a notary. That's fantastic.
God, it's so. But I love how like logistical that is. It's so like, wow, that is practical. Yeah, her sisters in this don't feature at all. I think they're just there for a rhyme. Ask her sisters, everyone. But and
the fact that it starts with there were three ladies.
Yeah,
it's just to say that I think it's just
ladies are around.
So it's ladies, but then it's sisters later on. So the three ladies are the three sisters. That's meant to be what it is, isn't it?
Do you think so? Okay.
Well, I wonder.
Oh, that would make more sense. Yeah. I always thought like, you got to ask your sisters, everyone. Where are the sisters? The brothers got such a big role here.
I wonder if that's what it was. Yeah.
No, I trust you, Matt. I trust you. I think that.
Well, I'm only speculating, really. It's never explicitly said. It's just there are three ladies playing the board, and later on, it's I have asked your sisters.
Everyone.
So I just wonder whether that's the three ladies are the sisters.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they are two other women just randomly.
That's it. Just two random ladies playing a ball, playing around.
And then it's just one night in this song, isn't it? But there are other versions where it is there 3 nights came, looked over the wall.
Oh yeah, no. When I sing it, I have 3 nights. Yeah.
Okay, fine.
A red one, a white one, and a green one.
There you go. And I think, it's only really the red one I think that is actually part of the plot. But it just tells you as a listener that he is part of a company, that he is a group of people. He is part of a group of people that have come travelling. I think that's what it just. Is that what
it means? The colours. That's what the colours mean.
I don't know about the colours, but I think just because it could very easily have been, since it's only the one night that has anything to do in the song. I think you could very easily just have there came one night riding by.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's 3, I think it's just a bit of setup. It's just a bit of story, sort of world building, in that he's part of a company of 3, and they're riding out, and then he sees some ladies
playing a ball. of
And
course.
three of them. So maybe there's two other songs about their stories about all
About the
three
other
of
two. I just hope they had a really simple time and this was the
the
one that
two
having a
knights,
really bad one.
the two knights and the two other sisters.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought. Also, the refrain on this one, I think that's perhaps why it also really stayed with me. Green grows the lily and the rose is sweet. Because it's a very sort of maudlin. The tune that I learnt is very sort of like dour.
Yeah.
It's like so I guess again that's very well below the valley refrain style, but yeah, it's I like that. I guess because of the what is our lily symbolism, death, rose symbolism, what more death? I mean, blood, death.
The flowers are such a huge part of folk song in terms of symbolism. We had there's Steve Roud said this when we I'm trying to which episode it was. Must have been the Seeds of Love, Roud 3 episode we did when I had Lizzie Harding as the guest and Steve Roud did the history. Because there's a whole thing in that about the gardener picked those three flowers and and the point with that song is that there are two songs for Seeds of Love. There's Seeds of Love and there's Let No Man Steal Your Time.
Yes.
And which there's a constant argument in traditional folk song circles about whether they should be two separate round numbers. Are they the same song? Are they not the same song? Like I know people who have said I would be happy to sing a version of each of them in the same gig.
Wow.
They obviously believe it's a different song.
Yeah.
But Steve Roud's concerned it's the same song. It's Roud 3. But
okay.
like Let No Man Steal Your Time, for example, is an earlier version. We've found versions much earlier of that than Seeds of Love. And Seeds of Love is where the flowers turn up. Let No Man Steal Your Time has time, obviously. That's the double meaning of time, as in THIY and TIME.
Yeah.
But then it's only when you get to the Victorian era and the sort of parlour songs and things, when you get Seeds of Love that has the flowers in it, the violet, the lily, and the pink. Because Steve Roud saying that the Victorians loved giving every single thing flowers and every single flower, every single something else, giving them all symbolism and meaning.
Oh, really?
And that's kind of the Victorians love that. And we're going to come on to that sort of thing soon on the Patreon. Vic Gammon's coming back to talk about a song for Rachel McShane's mini season, a song called The Gardener, actually. It's a child ballad. And there's so much flower stuff in there. Vic's going to talk a lot. He told me he's going to talk a lot about flowers and symbolism.
Oh, I'm desperate to hear about that because I'm so fascinated by it, by what they all mean in it. Because I think I'm really lilies lilies seem to turn up in pretty gloomy numbers, so lugubrious, sort of wet, dark, damp, suggestive, and then I feel like the roses, though, I always associate with Barbara Allen, like the briar and the rose, this love and thorns. So
that's right. That's the Barbara Allen will come to in a 2 or 3 seasons time, and of course the briar and the rose. Tom Waits took that and extended it into other things. I've just looked up on the very internet this very second. I've just found, is it called almanac.com / flowers meanings language flowers lily affection, friendship, and fidelity, apparently. But I have no idea what kind of historically accurate this is in terms of the Victorian era. This is just a website,
yeah.
And rosemary is claiming sort of remembrance, that sort of thing.
Yeah, Rosemary's for remembrance. I mean, you always know this because of Shakespeare, isn't it? Like, when Ophelia and stuff is going crazy.
That's right, of course. And of course, red roses on Valentine's Day, all that sort of cliched stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
But apparently red roses means love, as in I love you, but dark crimson roses are for mourning, apparently.
Well, there we go. I mean, I think that's it. I think I like the way that this chorus, green grows the lily, oh, and the rose is sweet and merry.
Yeah.
It does sort of speak to sort of the strangeness of this song. I don't think there's any you don't really get a sense that she's that up for marrying the guy, but she's presumably not that up for staying with her weird brother.
Yeah.
So it's just sort of a genuinely quite gloomy outlook. but yeah, I like that. I like that combo, and that the words sort of slightly work against the tune. I feel green grows the lily and the rose is sweet could be seen as very
Mm.
saccharine, but the way in which they hammer continually in this song gives it
Yeah.
real momentum. I think, like pushing, pushing, pushing to this doomy end. But I do prefer it to the Lady Motor, Bonnie Susie Clearland or whatever. I've
Oh
heard so
yeah,
many different versions,
that's
and
right.
I don't know. I feel like it's again maybe it's just that the murder is less led up to. So like you don't necessarily know that she's gonna be stabbed. The stabbing comes slightly out of the blue, whereas
Yeah.
in that other song, I feel like you're like, oh my god, she's gonna be burnt, and you're like, it's so plodding towards her demise of being burnt to death. So yeah, I quite like the briskness with which the death occurs in this one, if you can like that kind of thing, but it's a bit less morbid maybe.
Yeah, and then yeah, and even colors. I mean, colors in this one. It's just the striking sort of thing about the heart's blood in every scene with the bridal dress. Colors have a very sort of prominent. It's a very prominent way of giving you context. I think to sort of characters' feelings and emotions, and also just characters' actions as well. I mean, it's and just striking images. This idea of the red wedding dress
I
because
know.
because the blood and stuff. But the other songs, like I mean, obviously there's the colours of flowers and things, but you get. It was what was it? Oh, we covered it in season one again. Lord Thomas and Fair Eleanor, because in that you've got because Lord Thomas, Fair Eleanor, she's fair, and in that case, it's depending on who you ask, that can mean she's very lovely to look at. She's fair,
Yeah.
but also sometimes that can refer to hair color,
Yeah.
and she's white-haired. But then the other female character in that song is called the Brown Girl,
Yeah. So
and
yeah.
there's we had a whole debate about this podcast about whether is and there is that racism or
Yeah,
is
yeah,
it
yeah. It's a good
not?
question.
Is
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
is it racism or is it
Is it
she's got brown
descriptive?
hair?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah,
it
yeah.
brown hair or is it because she's of a lower class? She's been out working all day and therefore she's tanned,
Yeah,
whereas
yeah,
Fair Eleanor is of a higher social standing and wouldn't have been out all day working. She'd be indoors all day, so she's whiter skinned
yeah.
than the brown girl. So there's all sorts of arguments, but
Mm.
I have spoken to people I trust about such matters, and they've said no, it's racism. But
Yeah,
it's
yeah, I
just
think so, yeah.
it's all up open debate. But there are people whose opinions I trust on this sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
definitely. But yeah,
but
you're
but there's
right.
that, and there's other songs. The one that always comes to mind with colours is a song called "The Gown of Green." Do you know
Oh,
"The
I don't
Gown of
know that
Green"?
one. No, I don't.
It's I can't remember the round numbers off the top of my head. Not that would help, but it's a song about this guy comes home from war. It's one of these comes home from war and finds his sweetheart sort of song,
Mm.
but he doesn't have the disguises and the tokens and things. But he comes across this maiden walking in the park or in the fields or whatever, and she's carrying a baby, and it turns out that he is the baby's father. He is her sweetheart. He says, "Do you remember?" Uh, Essentially, "Do you remember me?" And she says, "Yes," and that's kind of the song. But the symbolism there is it's "Do you remember the day, my dear, you wore the gown of green?" And for
Oh, right.
that, the context of that is a gown of green is a white gown after you've been rolling around in the grass.
Oh, that makes sense. I thought she might just be naked among leaves. Who
No, I
knows?
think it's a white gown that's been stained by
Oh, got it.
having a nice time rolling around in the grass.
Oh, got it, got it.
And
No.
so colours have a very important thing in songs. I think
Yeah,
these old
yeah,
songs.
yeah, 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 yeah.
It's not just a bit of creative writing. Or what colour would that have been? Oh well, it would have been green.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it actually means something that the
yeah,
gown
yeah,
was
yeah.
green.
Exactly. And I think it is interesting that the lilies are green rather than white in this as well, that
Green
in
lilies. That's
green
right.
grow the lilies, which mean they could be lily of the valley, right? Rather than the arum lilies that we think of. And
Yeah.
lily of the valley have a whole different meanings.
I'm just going back to that list of flowers I found. A lily. Is there a green lily in there? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, lily of the valley. They've got another name. They're also called like cuckoo somethings. They have a sort of effervescence that
Okay.
when in the gloom. You look up lily of the valley, you might find.
Yeah. The valley, a woodland flowering
Yeah,
plant.
yeah.
Highly poisonous if consumed by humans and other animals.
There you go. But they have a lot of
Okay, there you go. Other names include Our Lady's Tears and
mm,
Mary's Tears.
yeah.
So there's something there possibly about. Who knows? Maybe there was a version of this song where the lady is called Mary. Who knows?
Yeah.
There's all sorts of. We could speculate about this for days.
No, that's it. I know. But I think that's why. It stuck with me as a quite. It's an unusual. It felt like a relatively unusual murder ballad. For me, maybe just because of the way the death happens, and because of the weighting of it, and yeah, and the testimony section, though it doesn't have quite as much length as Lord Randall. So it feels like quite a sort of even song, like there's not one section where you're like, we're this is what it's all about, like some of them. Or and I quite like that it's relatively, because what's that song? The one about where she keeps asking her son why he's covered in blood. Oh, what is the blood in your shirt? Oh, Lord Henry. Do you know that one? Where she keeps saying, "Why are you covered in blood?" And he says, "Oh, it's my dog, it's my hawk, it's my hound."
Yeah, that's also Lucy One as well.
Oh,
Has
is
a
that
lot of
Lucy
that in
one?
it,
Oh, okay, yeah, that's it. But so
and
that's
it ends up being it's the blood of my
my
sister
sister.
Lucy,
Yeah, it's the
and
blood. Yeah, exactly. Okay, right. So it's that one. But again, like that angle is from the brother who's done, So
yeah.
I quite and sheath the knife as well. You speaks a lot from the brother. I quite like this that all the characters are sort of third person. They're sort of these sort of relatively equally weighted shady figures rollicking around. You're not fully in anyone's head at any one point. You just get quite a lot of text. So I think that's maybe why it stuck with me, and also in such a sort of purely memory form rather than something that I top up regularly. One of those ballads that stays with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the lily of the valley, used as a poison in the Breaking Bad finale, the finale of Breaking Bad season 4. There
Is
you go.
it? I feel like it comes. Lily of the Valley does come up a lot. It does come up in lots of different things. I remember there was a thing that there was like that it lit the way for the body of a nun, I think, to travel across the fens or something, because it has like an effervescent glow. It's all of this stuff, but it's a sort of eerie plant, I would say.
Yeah,
It's not like a white pretty plant. It's a slightly odd one, and that's why it's green.
yeah.
Um,
Odd and poisonous.
Odd and poisonous, and again we're in the dark, we're in the
Yeah.
woods, and then you've got these roses sweet trying to grow amidst it all, which is sort of
Indeed.
doomed in
And
this song.
there's a Queen song called Lily of the Valley as well.
Oh, is there?
I haven't heard it, so I've no idea what it's about really, but But yeah,
Yeah,
anyway, it's the flowers thing is very, very sort of important in a lot of these folk songs
yeah,
to do with the
definitely.
symbolism and stuff. So yeah, it's I think we've talked about that for quite too long already.
Yeah, sorry. No, but I think that's why these songs, this song in particular, these songs stay in my mind because of that burden, that
Yeah,
it's important, and I think that's why it sticks in the mind. So yeah, that's why it felt important to
amazing.
discuss. Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about before we move on to the recommendations section?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, we sort of exhausted quite a lot of that, but yeah, I mean, it's there's so much to discuss sometimes with this stuff, and we could go even deeper into a lot of that stuff, but we save our listeners. We make this sort of in depth and detail, but we don't want to bore people to death.
No, that's true.
The sort of thing that if we were in a pub, you and I could just babble on for hours.
Yeah, exactly. That would be so nice.
There are a few hundred people listening to this,
Yeah.
so that's fine. Yeah. So then, as usual, recommendations of other modern or revival people doing it. Obviously, we have Crucible, don't we? Because that's the version.
Crucible is the version now I know. That's what I learnt. Now that
There
we
we
were able to
go.
try that, so Crucible, yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's a 2008 album called Love and Money, and the song on that one is called Three Maidens from the John Clare manuscripts. That one, it
That's
says,
great.
apparently.
Oh wow, I could actually look it up and check if my words have got any
There you go.
validity.
You could. It's in George Deacon's book, John Clare and the Folk Tradition. 17 songs collected and written by John Clare.
No, not written by him,
Well,
surely.
17 songs which were either collected or written by him. There's a
Okay, all
mixture
right.
of.
Okay.
But yeah, I can't remember what the song's called in the book. I'm going to look at it up now. Round 26. Oh, I don't know. Maybe, I'm not sure. But anyway, there's a book there. That one you can look up.
Yeah.
Then, yeah, other people have performed it. Martin Simpson did it on an album called Kind Letters, I think it's called.
Oh yeah, was that coming out around the same time? What kind of year is that?
2005, so that was about 3 years before the Crucible one. But that's really good. I think that's him and a banjo or guitar, one of the two. I'd be a stupid thing to say. I won't bother doing that. I'll cut that out. Other people, I think, do really good versions of it. Kath and Phil Tyler did a version of it on their album called The Hind Wheels of Bad Luck. And that's called Three Maidens as well. Maybe that's the same. That could very well be at least a variant on the same one as Crucible. Peggy Seeger recorded it on her 1982 album with Ewan MacColl called Blood and Roses Volume 2. And yeah, that's called The Cruel Brother in that one. And not sure where she got that from, but it's there. Steel Eye Span as well did it twice, in fact. It's on their 2016 album called Dodgy Bastards, but their version is called Gulliver, Gentle and Rosemary. I think that one is. And then there's a Cruel Brother. I can't remember which way round one of them is. On the Dodgy Bastards album, and then their 50th anniversary tour 3 years later, there's one of them is Cruel Brother and one of them is Gulliver, Gentle and Rosemary. I can't remember which way around they are, but they're both Child 11, so that counts. Eliza Carthy sang it, which is a very, very good version. Liza and her mum, Norma Waterson. That's The Rose and the Lily, and it's on the album Gift, which was the Eliza and Norma with the Gift band. And that's, I think they said the bulk of that comes from the Bronson. I think they just cobbled together a load of verses from the different versions in Bronson's tunes of the child ballads. But that's really fantastic, that one, and that's one of my favourites. And of course, there's your version.
Of course, there's my version, which we should all listen to if you want to sort of one that's been stewed in my brain.
That's an album called Silver Pin from 2018.
2018, yeah. Have a listen to that. Yeah, with a big crunchy accordion and cello.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And there's another version, which I'll recommend, which is actually a plug, in a way, for the episode that's going to come out in 2 weeks' time of this podcast, because there's a band called The She that did a version of this called 3 Nights on an album called Murmurations from 2012. And that song was sung by Rachel Newton. And Rachel is going to be our singing guest in 2 weeks' time for the song Hind Horn, I think.
Ooh!
So there we go. That's a nice link to finish off with.
Excellent work. Rachel
Newton singing 3 Nights in the She. But there we go. I'll put links to all those in the show notes as usual. So, Sophie, before we finish...
Yeah?
This episode goes out on the 19th of March, so pretend it's the 19th of March.
Okay.
What gigs, work, stuff have you got coming up over the next few weeks or months?
Oh, yeah. Well, I've just found out today that it looks like I'm going to be going on tour in May, which I'm really excited about, but that's a sort of slightly like, oh, can I talk about it yet? So even though it's quite soon, but
Sure.
Hopefully by the end of this week, hopefully by the time this goes out, I'll be able to be like telling everyone. And then also Queer Folk are organising a Queer Folk Festival at EFTUS in Cecil Trap House in London.
Oh, wow.
That's on June the 7th. That'll be amazing. Whole day of talks and sessions, and everyone is totally welcome. It's just a chance to like really find out about what's going on, and there'll be amazing music from people, and just a chance to hang out. And
That's
then
brilliant.
we're also
I will be gigging myself that night somewhere else, so I cannot.
Oh, don't worry. We're always catching you.
Yeah.
We're gonna be. I think we're going to Sidmouth and Shrewsbury folk festivals, and then we're also doing teaching a course at Wolsey this summer in July. I should know the dates, but yeah, which is an amazing opportunity for anyone who wants to come and make a band. Actually, it's if you want to meet other folk musicians, queer folk musicians, and just play music together and find collaborators. That is the place, and there's some super duper reduced places for young people. So please, everyone, come along. Regardless of age, and have a great time. So there's lots of fun things coming up.
Amazing. Well, I'll definitely see you at Sidmouth Folk Festival then.
Yeah, that'll be so nice.
I'm
Matt.
always there. We'll catch you.
Yeah,
We'll catch you for a song and a tune and a Kaylee dance or something.
I would love that, Matt. Thank you.
Be fun times. And yeah, it'd be so good to, I don't know, at some point in the future to have you back on the podcast or on the Patreon maybe for a 3-episode Singer's Choice mini-season.
Love that.
I'm trying not to repeat singer guests too much. I haven't repeated anyone so far on the singer half.
Okay, well done.
And I'm trying to there are so many singers out there and so many songs that I'm trying to put off getting someone back in for as long as possible. I'm very happy to bring people back, but I'm trying to put it off as long as possible to try and we want to get a good spread of variety of singers and things. So
yeah, it's a great idea.
People.
It's an amazing project.
So I'm sure we'll have you back at some point in the future for something or other. Definitely. But in the meantime, Sophie Crawford, thank you very much.
There were 3 ladies played at ball. Green growed the lily-o, they were virgins, maidens all, and the roses sweet and merry. There came a yon white knight, green growed the lily-o, to take a maiden as his bride, and the roses sweet and merry. There came a yon red knight, green growed the lily-o, to take another as his bride, and the roses sweet and merry. There came a yon green knight, green growed the lily-o, to take the final as his bride, and the roses sweet and merry. You must ask of me, father dear, green growed the lily-o, and the mother that did me bear, and the roses sweet and merry. You must ask of me, brother John, green growed the lily-o, and you must ask my sisters every one, and the roses sweet and merry. I have asked of you, father dear, green growed the lily-o, and the mother that did you bear, and the roses sweet and merry. I have asked your sisters every one, green growed the lily-o, and I have asked of your lover John, and the roses sweet and merry. Her father led her to the door, green growed the lily-o, and her brother gave her death wound, and the roses sweet and merry. Ride on, you false young man, green growed the lily-o, for I fear your bride looks awfully worn, and the roses sweet and merry. Ride on and never fail, green growed the lily-o, for I fear your bride looks awfully pale, and the roses sweet and merry. What'll you leave your mother dear? Green growed the lily-o, oh, the bridal dress that I do wear, and the roses sweet and merry. take it down to yonder stream. Green grow the lily-o, how my heart's blood runs in every seam, and the rose is sweet and merry. What'll you leave of your father dear? Green grow the lily-o, oh, the wedding ring that I do wear, and the rose is sweet and merry. What'll you leave of your brother John? Green grow the lily-o, oh, a hangman's noose to hang him on, and the rose is sweet and merry. What'll you leave o' your brother's wife? Green grow the lily-o, oh, to mourning weeds for all her life, and the rose is sweet and merry.
That was Sophie Crawford singing Green Grows the Lily. That brings us to the end of the episode. What do you think? What are your thoughts on the song? I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to get in touch with me, feel free to drop me an email at intheroud@singyonder.co.uk or visit the podcast on various social media platforms. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads and Blue Sky. Just search for In the Roud, a folk song podcast. If you're enjoying the podcast, I would very much appreciate it if you would give us a little rating and review on wherever you get your podcasts from. On places like Apple Music, there's a star rating out of 5. 5-star rating would be lovely, thank you very much. And you can write a little review as well. It takes less than a minute if you wanted to. But it really helps so much in helping the podcast reach a wider audience. And on places like YouTube, that's the thumbs up button. And you can write comments and things. And please do share the podcast with your friends and family if you want to subject them to this sort of thing. If you feel so moved to support the podcast financially, then please do head on over to patreon.com/intheroud. And there you can sign up for either £5 or £10 per month, and you receive regular bonus content. Even if you don't want to hear the bonus content, that's the place to support the podcast. We're in the middle of our current Singer's Choice mini-season at the moment, with special guest Rachel McShane. Last week, we looked at her second choice, which was Roud 3448, the song Plumen Laddies. There will be no Patreon episode this week, but when we come back next week, we will be looking at Rachel's third and final choice, Roud 339, that's Child Ballad 219, The Gardener. And on the history side, I'll be joined by In the Roud regular Vic Gammon. Sign up to hear this and more at In the Roud on Patreon, patreon.com/intheroud. In the Roud is a media partner of Veteran, the traditional music label. Although this week's song doesn't currently feature on any of their releases, you can find details of their extensive catalogue on their website, veteran.co.uk. One last huge thanks to this week's guests Martin Nail and Sophie Crawford. Join me next week for episode 7. We will be looking at Roud 27, which is Child Ballad number 14, The Bonnie Banks of Fordy. On the history side, I will be joined by regular contributor Brian Peters, and my singer guest will be Casey McFarlane. Until then, that's it from me. Stay safe, be well, and I'll see you next time in the Roud.